Dodge City Community College Radio, 1550 KDCC, Dodge City.
Hello, my name is John Phillips. I'm the faculty sponsor of the High Plains Astronomical Society. Today we will be talking with Dr. Clyde Tombaugh, who is perhaps most famous for his discovery of the ninth planet Pluto. Thank you, Dr. Tombaugh, for talking with us. First, could you tell us about the discovery of Pluto on February 18th, 1930?
Yes. This was in the afternoon while I'm scanning plates. It's not possible to discover a planet at night just looking through a telescope, because the only means of identifying it as a planet is its motion, and when Pluto moves so slowly, you'd have to watch 2 hours to see if it moved. So you can't do that for several 100,000 stars. So you have to take a photograph, and a few minutes later take another of the same region, and then you scan them together on a machine that gives alternating views back and forth. You're comparing the field from one plate to that of another of a different date. That's the only way you can do it. In other words, Pluto will shift at opposition time, where it's opposite the Sun. It'll shift to the west caused mostly by the Earth's orbital motion, and that gives the parallax effect, and it also, the amount of the shift gives a pretty good indication of the distance.
Okay, so most people would think you would have found it just looking through the telescope, but you really took a whole lot of photographs and then studied them.
The only way you see that Pluto looks just like the other stars, and there's several 100,000 other objects on the plate that look just like it. How do you distinguish it?
How long did you have to spend to looking at those plates?
Well, I started in September 1929, and but of course I was going through the zodiac, and I didn't come to the region where it was until January of 1930. You have to take the plate where it's the region of the sky that is opposite from the Sun. When you take a plate in that region, then anything beyond the Earth's orbit is moving backward to the west, caused by the Earth's orbital motion eastward. And that's the only clue you have, is the shift in position.
I see. So you
have to do it photographically. You see, you're going to test several 100,000 stars to see if any of them is a planet. And since it moves so slowly, in 2 hours to see any motion at all, then you see you have to take a photograph, and then a few nights later take another one, and then compare the two together.
I see. How was this planet named?
This was borrowed from the mythology. Pluto was the god of the lower world known as Hades, and it's supposed to be semi-dark out there, so on. And since Pluto was so far from the sun and the sunlight very dim, they thought it was a good name.
I see. They later named one of the elements after Pluto, didn't they?
Yes, plutonium. Yes, if he had named it something else, you would not have known it as plutonium.
That's interesting. Okay, you were born in Illinois, February 4th, 1906,
yes,
and later moved to Burdett, Kansas.
1922.
What was Kansas like when you lived here?
Well, of course, there were people were using horses to farm with, and each farm had about a section of land to farm, and we raised mostly wheat, and of course it's sort of a rolling country, low hills and broad flat fields, and fairly semi-dry climate compared to the further east, you see. And people are very friendly, and it's a small town, Burdett, about 400 people at the time, and a small high school.
What kinds of activities did you take part in at Burdett High School?
Track and field. In fact, I was a star pole vaulter and a high jumper. Wasn't fast enough to run.
Can you remember back then what kind of car your family might have owned?
Yeah, we had an Oldsmobile. And then let's see, I forgot some other cars you got. Our first car was a second-hand Buick my dad bought one night in 1911.
I know you liked horses. Did you have your own horse back then?
Yeah, I had my own favorite horse, my saddle horse. We had some wonderful horses. They were my friends.
Did you get a chance to visit Dodge City very often?
Yes, I've been in Dodge City at least 20 or 30 times. I'd come in there when I come home for vacation, and I'd get off the train at Dodge City, and I would board the train at Dodge City.
Did you come into town for entertainment or anything, or was that too far away?
No, that's too far away. I never did that, but it was a matter of going back and forth to meet train schedules mostly. And then, of course, later we drove home from Kansas from Flagstaff, and of course we would drive along 54 and then drive up to Dodge City, go home through Jetmore. So I always went through Dodge City.
Dr. Tombaugh, what led to your interest in astronomy?
Pardon?
What led to your interest in astronomy?
Oh. Well, I had, in grade school, I had a strong interest in geography. And one day, about the 6th grade, the thought occurred to me, what would the geography be like on the other planets? And that was it.
You had some early telescopes back then too, didn't you?
Yes, they were simple ones, not terribly effective.
Could you tell us about some of the early telescopes you built yourself?
The first one I built was an 8-inch reflector, but it didn't turn out too well because the directions were too meager. And then Scientific American published a book a little later called Amateur Telescope Making, and so I got a copy and I did much better after that. It's quite a demanding art.
I understand you even talked your dad into helping build a cyclone shelter to grind lenses in.
Yeah, I did the digging. Every farmer in that neighborhood really needs a cyclone cellar, or tornado cellar, as you might call it, because we have bad storms there quite often, and sometimes they may be quite life-threatening. So we would have that to keep our butter and cream and eggs and stuff in the summer, keep them cool and warm in the winter from freezing. So I suggested to my dad that we make it long so I'd have enough tests now to test my mirrors. They test them at the center curvature, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I needed an alley test way of about 15 feet or so.
What was the advantage of doing it down in the cellar?
To keep the temperature constant, because tests like that are extremely sensitive to little currents, pockets of air, different temperatures, and it would mess up the image of the test. So it's very important to keep the temperature quite constant, both during the grinding and polishing, and also during the testing. And of course, the temperature is very constant down in the cave, as they call them.
Well, about how old were you when you built that first telescope?
I was, let's see, I was 20, and that didn't turn out so well. Then I made a 7-inch for my uncle in 27, and then I made my 9-inch, 1928, which was a very good telescope, which I still have.
Well, that's amazing. It's still good after all these years.
Oh yeah, nothing deteriorates about it. You have to get a good exact curve on the parabola, as they say. And so I made drawings of the markings on Mars and Jupiter with it in the fall of 1928 and sent them to the Lowell Observatory at Flagstaff, Arizona, to see what they would think of them. And they, of course, they could check them for accuracy against the current photographs of the dates that I had indicated. And they were apparently favorably impressed, so they invited me to come out for a job.
Dr. Tombaugh, you're most famous for your discovery of Pluto. What other important discoveries did you make at Lowell Observatory?
Well, there were several important byproducts in the search, too. I discovered the second largest supercluster of galaxies in the fall of 37, 6 star clusters, thousands of asteroids, several thousand asteroid images on the plates, 1,800 variable stars, and so on, 2 comets, so on. But during the war, I was in the military draft, and I was assigned to teaching navigation in a Navy school set up at Northern Arizona University campus. And then following that, I came to White Sands Missile Range.
Okay, let me back up just a little bit. In 1931, you attended KU. What were those years like?
Well, I was 32. I entered the school in the fall of 32.
Oh, okay.
Not 31. Well, I entered as a freshman. I wore my green cap, so on, and did as other students do, except I was a little older in my age than most of the freshmen. So I went 4 years and got my diploma.
As an alumnus, do you keep up with KU's activities at all?
Pardon?
As an alumnus of KU, do you keep up with their activities?
More or less, yes, more or less. I belong to the membership, and I get the journals.
Well, in 1933, you built the United States, what probably was the first richest field telescope. Could you tell us about that instrument?
Yes, that's a little short one. See, the short focal length gives a smaller scale, but a bigger angular field. And so I thought it'd be interesting to make one and to see, and it gave very impressive views of the Milky Way and nebulae and so on, because it had a large field and plenty of light power, and beautiful views. And so I reported this to the Scientific American, and they published a book, another book later called Amateur Telescope Making Advanced, and they have pictures in there of the telescopes and me, and describing my views, and it's caught on like wildfire, and they say some 60,000 amateurs in the country made telescopes like it.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it was a forerunner. I still have that one too.
Oh yeah, do you get it out at very often?
Well, yes. It's excellent for comet hunting, just to write, not too big, not too small.
In 1934, that was a big year for you. You were married to Patsy, is that right?
Yes.
And what does she think of the long hours involved in astronomy?
Well, she's used to that because she had a brother interested in astronomy. So I knew she'd have some sympathy to that.
Did she ever go out and view with you?
Oh, yes, quite a good deal.
Okay. We'll need to take a break here in just a minute, Dr. Tombaugh, and then we'll get back to our questions.
Okay.
The average high school activities program uses about 1% of the school's annual total budget.
Oh, we're just taking a
What other programs attract as many students yet cost so little? We believe high school activities are a key ingredient to the total concept of education, and we hope to keep it that way. This message is from the Kansas State High School Activities Association and your friends at Dodge City Community College Radio, KDCC 1550 AM.
Okay, this is John Phillips, and I'm talking live with Dr. Clyde Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto in 1930. Well, Dr. Tombaugh, I'd like to get back to our questions. I'm curious, in October 31st, 1938, Orson Welles broadcast his infamous War of the Worlds drama. What made that broadcast so believable to so many people?
Well, Orson Welles was very, very good at making it realistic, you know. He was a prize actor on that. Of course, he was a young man at the time. In 1938, when that was first broadcast, Patsy and I were back at Lawrence, Kansas. I was working on my master's degree, and I was studying one evening there in October, I think it was, and they said, we have a big special announcement. So they broke the program as if the event had just happened, you know. It was extremely realistic. Well, I was stopped, gee, this is great. I'm experiencing the first visit from another planet on Earth. And so I was taking it in. And then they finally said, we think it came from Mars because we saw some flashes of light from Mars the night before at some fictitious observatory. Well, I knew that jig was up because at that time, Mars was squarely behind the sun and nobody could observe it. So I knew it was all fishy from there on. But not everybody knew that.
So you knew it was fake, but if you wouldn't have known about where Mars was, it was pretty believable.
Yes, it was. So I knew that kind of observation was impossible at the time.
Well, then there was World War II, and what were you involved with during that time?
Well, I was teaching navigation in the Navy V-12 school set up at on the campus of what is now Northern Arizona University at Flagstaff. And also I was elected to be the supervisor of the civilian defense of that whole area. And that kept me pretty busy. Coconino County, I was the supervisor. I had to organize the air raid wardens and auxiliary firemen and policemen, forest firefighters and nurses' aides and all that. I was busy.
Was that a scary time?
Pardon?
Was that a scary time for people back here?
Well, yes, somewhat, because we didn't know how much capacity the Japanese had. And they had reported that there was a small submarine attack on the Pacific coast near Los Angeles, and some shells had been fired into California on the submarine. And so with our fleet crippled, it looked pretty serious. It looked rather bad. And in fact, some people were expecting a Japanese invasion of California. And it was pretty scary.
Well, then, after the war, you worked at White Sands Proving Grounds at Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Yeah, and then later they named the missile range.
And then it was renamed. Can you tell us a little about the V-2 rocket program?
Yes, well, I worked there 9 years, and they were firing the captured V-2 rockets brought over from Germany. I went there in 1946, in August, and I saw about 50 of the V-2 rockets fired from various places. It was a pretty big rocket, and it's pretty awesome to see this thing go. And it had go up over 100 miles and land in the north part of the range. They used that against England during the war. I was the supervisor of the optics section of the ballistics lab, and I was responsible for getting the trajectories of the missiles. And I had about 75 men under my supervision. And so they were using instruments in what had been the warhead for measuring things in the upper atmosphere, and even some astronomical observations to get beyond into the far ultraviolet. So there were about over 50 of them. 62 of them were fired to White Sands, and I saw almost all of them fired. They were big rockets. They were 46 feet long, 62 inches in diameter, and they had 4 tons of rocket metal, very complicated machinery, 7 tons of alcohol, and 8 tons of liquid oxygen. And so it's a pretty powerful bomb.
Did any of them launch wrong?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of dangerously close calls. Some of them explode on the launcher, some explode about 4 miles up and going through the transonic region, which shatters the rocket and breaks things. And we had some that didn't program properly and fell back in the launch area where we had our camera stations. We had several dangerous close brushes of impact. And they'd make craters about 75 feet wide and 20 feet deep, because they'd hit the ground at about a speed of a mile a second. And then the energy is pretty awesome.
What was it? Yeah, what was it like working with Werner von Braun?
Well, I didn't work with him directly because he's in another section. In the firing, I was out in the field with the charge of the theodolites and tracking telescopes.
Did you get to meet him at all, though?
Oh, yeah, I knew him quite well personally.
Well, in a way, your satellite search cleared the way for manned flight into outer space. Could you tell me a little bit about that program?
Yes, I thought it would be, since I saw the possibility that the rockets, they could put up artificial satellites, and I thought we should explore the space around the Earth to see if there are any natural rocks going around, because the angular velocity would be too great and they'd be diluted and they wouldn't register on ordinary photographs. So my proposal was to have high-speed cameras running at a high tracking rate to match the velocity in the sky, and therefore prevent dilution of the image. And we never found any.
Would Which was good for us.
Yes, it was very good for us. But before that, we didn't know.
Now, I understand you took some pictures of Sputnik 1.
Of what?
Of the Russians when they launched Sputnik 1.
Yes. I think we got some of the first pictures.
Well, in the 60s, then you launched the astronomy department at New Mexico State University. What were those years like?
Well, I was on part-time research and part-time teaching, and pretty busy schedule.
Did you enjoy teaching?
Yes, quite well. It was pretty heavy a program because I felt like I was teaching 3/4 time and doing research 3/4 time.
Yeah. Busy schedule then.
I worked there until I retired at the end of the spring semester of 1973.
Dr. Tombaugh, what advice do you have for young people who may be interested in science or astronomy?
Well, they should, by all means, get a doctorate nowadays, and they should know they should be very good at mathematics and physics. And otherwise, I don't think they have a chance to meet the competition.
So it takes a lot of education nowadays to be a professional at it.
Well, there's a lot of knowledge, and some of it's very, very complex.
How about as an amateur? Do you recommend people get involved with amateur astronomy?
Oh, yeah, that's a good pastime. Now people have a lot of fun at that, you know. They make their own telescopes, and they go out, they have observing clubs, and they go out and have a good time, see these wonderful things in the sky, and it's become quite a hobby. There are probably 100,000 in this country who are amateur astronomers.
What were your impressions of the Shoemaker-Levy 9 comet crash?
Oh, that was a circus. I knew it would be because the high velocity of impact I knew would produce a lot of rumpus on Jupiter. I expected it would be quite a visible result.
It was pretty impressive.
Because you see, at White Sands Missile Range, I'd see missiles come in hitting the ground in a mile a second, and that energy was pretty awesome. And here, if you have 40 miles per second, the destructiveness goes up to the square of the velocity, so it would be 1,600 times greater. So I knew these bodies, ice balls about a mile or so in diameter hitting Jupiter, would have a tremendous impact on Jupiter, and then they did.
What do you think the chances are for Earth to be hit by that kind of impact in the future?
We have gotten some in the past, you see. One of the more recent big ones was the meteor crater in Arizona, between Flagstaff and Winslow. It's about a mile in diameter and 600 feet deep, and it occurred about 20,000 years ago. Now there are many other big meteorite craters on the Earth. There's one in Bavaria, Germany, that is pretty well filled in. It was 15 miles across, and originally it was 3 miles deep. And that occurred about 15 million years ago. And then there's some in Africa, one is 60 miles across, there's some in Australia, and so on. And so there are many of them over the Earth's surface. And of course, these Earth-crossing asteroids can get their orbits changed a little bit by gravitational perturbations of the planet. And there's always a chance that eventually they get their orbits changed and can crash into the Earth. And we had some close brushes a few years ago. For example, one of them crossed Earth's orbit. We were just 6 hours of time ahead of it in our orbit. Otherwise, we'd been hit. And so this came within 400,000 miles of the Earth, about a kilometer in diameter, and that would have been extremely destructive. So we've had some close brushes. Of course, they've occurred in the past, too, like the big one that hit that did the dinosaurs in. About 60 million years ago. 70 million years ago.
Dr. Tombaugh, do you believe there's intelligent life elsewhere in the universe?
Oh, yes. With all the unfavorable odds you can think of for planets, that we know from sampling of the universe with the largest telescopes that we know there exists at least 10 to the 21st power number of stars or suns. Now, you may not realize how big that number is until I tell you that the total number of grains of sand on all the Earth's ocean beaches is only 10 to the 19th power. So that means there are 10 to the second power, or 100 times more stars than are grains of sand on the Earth's surface. And you can't expect all of them to be sterile like that. In fact, maybe half the stars have planetary systems. And some of them will be the right size, the right distance, to have conditions for life as we know it, see. So I'm sure there are trillions of planets in the universe that have alien civilization living on them right now.
That's amazing. We have so much more left to learn, don't we?
Yes. You see, people have been sort of self-centered to think the Earth is it. The Earth is only a small little drop in an ocean compared to the universe. And these other stars are a bunch of mini-men like our sun, and they could have systems of planets just like our sun.
Dr. Tombaugh, Monday we're having our dedication ceremony for the Clyde Tombaugh Astronomy Center. Would you have a comment for the people attending the dedication ceremony?
Well, I want to congratulate them and thank them for naming the observatory after me, and I've thought of you quite often, and wish you a very enjoyable time. And I'd be interested in hearing about your activities.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tombaugh. I've enjoyed talking with you.
You're okay.
I appreciate you doing this interview. Stay on the line for a minute, and I'll talk with you a few more minutes, but
okay.
We'll go off the air right now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
On the rock of Dodge City, this is KDCC 1550 AM.